guys, what's up? It's Matt, and I'm so excited. It's the 14th episode of the RYLA Routine. It is Friday here, recording for Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, and we have a super person with us today. We got Harper. Harper, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. So Harper coming straight at us. Are you in Stillwater right now?
Yes. So I'm a senior at Oklahoma State University right now. So yeah, I'm living in Stillwater.
Awesome. So you're a senior at Oklahoma State. We'll work backwards. What are you working on in school? Like, what's your major?
So right now I'm majoring in political science with a focus in campaign management, lobbying, and policy. And I'm also adding a minor my junior year to work on speech communications.
Awesome. Well, and I had a Tori on a couple weeks back. Tori works in Senator Markwayne Mullin's office, and I was, kind of talked to her, and you guys both were sponsored by the Prior Rotary Club, and that's how you guys got to RYLA. If I remember correctly, you came to camp in 2018. Is that correct?
Yes. So in 2018 I was a junior at Prior.
Okay, so we've got 18, 19, and then 2 and 23. So 4 camps, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So CIT once, Chief twice, Camper once.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, so Pryor, Oklahoma, I was joking a little bit with Harper a while ago. So Harper is from Pryor. I literally spent all day in Pryor today. I got to see Tracy and Gary, got to see Maria, got to go to the Rotary Club meeting there in Pryor today. I had an opportunity, Harper, to go back, and since 2012, the Pryor Club has sponsored 121 kids to come to camp. And I look at that and just think that's a pretty awesome number. But I shared that with the club, and they were pretty shocked, because when you think about 120 kids times $300, that's almost a $5,000 investment on the cash side. But we talk about money, it's vision, right? So what happens after the money is spent? And I think so we talked to Tori the other day, and then talked to you today. Obviously, there's still youth in young ladies, we'll not call you youth, young ladies that are investing back in RYLA and back in Rotary, while being her in her vocation, and you finishing up school as you move forward. So tell me a little bit about how you found out about camp.
So I was actually looking back at pictures about camp. I pretty sure I had got picked to go kind of last minute to go to camp. It was kind of a spot had opened back up and they had to find someone to fill it, and I was available to go. I I love doing anything going to camp wise, and so I was like, perfect, this is for me. And then when I got there, I remember seeing how loud and how leadership based it was. I was like, oh, this is a little out of my comfort zone. But now looking back, I credit a lot of my success in college and continuing to want to help other people to the skills I learned back at RYLA.
Can you
You know, just
give me an example? It's like you talked about crediting back. Like, give me an example of like what's something at camp that you've taken away that you could say, hey, now as a 4-year senior, like something that like tangible that you've taken and you've kind of put into play.
so I can remember my one of my first tribe times at RYLA, actually, one of my CITs being like, everyone take your cool card out of your pocket and throw it away. No one here is too cool to get to know each other. No one here is too cool to participate. And that's just kind of has always stuck with me going forward, is that like, um, you're not too cool for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And to fully be present in something, and don't let maybe your preconceived ideas of where you are or any negative thoughts affect what you're doing, to really try and open yourself up and like accept all the knowledge being thrown at you.
Awesome. So you go to camp, you talk about your first tribe time, and that I think that's I've never heard anybody say that, but I think that's 110%, especially when you come, when I look back at numbers, I think 2018, like obviously that's the kind of the we're kind of this point where we're like doing this, and there's a ton of kids at camp. Um, and you got a bunch of kids, like if a bunch of kids from Prior come, or a bunch of kids from, Grove or Miami or wherever, if those kids all come together, they all know each other. We try to do our best job about putting kids in different tribes, right? Put these 17-year-olds in different tribes. So like I'm not there with my friend. But even so, you're right. I mean, we're still a 17-year-old. I still got how I'm supposed to act, maybe. Um, and being a little vulnerable is okay. Being vulnerable as an adult's okay. But as a 17-year-old saying, hey, put that card on the shelf could be a challenge for some. Talk about your camper year maybe, and a little bit about like where was there a moment where you're like, okay, this is different? Because you talked
What
about liking camps and things like that. Like, was there a point where you're like, okay, this is a different kind of place or a different camp?
I think I'd always kind of been a quieter person. I loved being involved in stuff I was involved in, but the moment I was out of my comfort zone, not knowing anyone, it was very much like I was on the outskirts. Like I was the student who sat by themselves. I was a student who participated when asked, but I was not going to volunteer myself to do something maybe more outgoing.
Gotcha.
Um, but I don't think at camp I had the growth as much as some other students. I definitely think my growth came more after. I can remember going home from camp, getting on that bus to go back to Pryor, Oklahoma, falling asleep probably, and then my parents picking me up and talking to my parents afterwards, and just not nonstop talking.
Yeah.
I had the date that applications opened up, my calendar from the moment I left camp. So I was like, I want to go back. And every year since, it's like I want to go back because I hope I can help the quiet kid eventually realize they don't have to be quiet, and if they are quiet, they don't have to be outgoing as they think they need to be. That they can
Right.
find their own way to like make a difference. It's not one size fits all. There's an impact everyone can make.
Yeah, I think I think it was with maybe with Cade. I was talking to Cade, and we kind of asked. It's one of those things where some people, or it was Tori, we were talking about like the thing of like maybe people get camp at camp, and maybe some people it takes getting in the car. Or it takes a week later to go,
Mhm.
huh? I miss that feeling, or I miss that moment. Um, like I'm the cool kid, right? Didn't put my card up, and all of a sudden I get the car, and I go home and I talk to somebody who didn't get to experience it. It's just like just constant like overload. Like we did this and we did this and we did this and we did that. When you think about that conversation with your parents, what was there a activity or is there a activity as a camper where you're like after the fact, like, wow, I hadn't seen that was different, that meant a lot to me, that was a lot of my experience, and maybe that's the CIT or chief as well. Like, what's the one thing, the activity at camp that you feel like is just the absolute most awesome part of camp that you see camp benefit from?
I feel like probably a stereotypical answer is probably the wall. Once you get over, I remember going over the wall for the first time, and I'm a tall girl. I'm not a small
Right.
person. And being like, I'm not gonna get over. I was the girl who was, I'm not gonna be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But in every year since, I get more excited. Now I'm always scared to go over. And
Sure.
as a chief in the CIT, you can kind of plan a little bit on who's going before you, and you can make sure you have support. But especially I think it was the first RYLA 2023, where I got to help a girl get over the wall.
Uh-huh.
And I saw myself in her so much, where she was the student body president. She was the girl at school who was involved.
Right.
And when she found out about the wall, she was like, I'm not going over. And I just remember being like, I thought the same thing. Like, you're going to get over, walking through her with her. This is how it's going to happen. And it was a student. We were so similar, so we kind of didn't connect almost at first, because we were so
Sure.
similar, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember she got over that wall, and when she came over, she hugged me, and I mean hugged me for like dear life, because she did something that she thought she was never going to do. And I just remember sitting there and being like, I'm so happy she did that, and also feeling so grateful that I have learned how to guide someone to do something like this. And
Right.
that's now a moment that I can't, I won't ever forget that feeling at RYLA. In that moment, you could have told me it was only the two of us up there. Like, no one else was there. It was just us.
Yeah, the wall is, we've talked about it. I talked about it with Aaron, and it kind of a similar experience where you have this camper that makes that has their RYLA moment, and all of a sudden it becomes your RYLA moment.
Mhm.
Because you finally see the power of the process and a little bit of the trust. And I was looking, I've talked a lot with people over the past few weeks as we've done these about just being kind. And like we've got a lot of great RYLA t-shirts that we've had in the past, since 2012. Like if there's been, 120 some odd campers at RYLA from prior, I don't even know how many. That's 5% of the campers that have come to camp have come from prior, have come from Mays County. And so that in the past since 2012, but I look at the, all the t-shirts, and I think I'm just to the point where I'm just going to make a t-shirt that says be kind, because like all the great messages that we put out there, like what we're really getting down to is like when we talk to campers and I talk to other people, RYLA becomes this place where I'm accepted. It becomes this place where the cool card can be left. And at the same time, there's this genuine opportunity to just be there for people. And if challenge by choice didn't exist either, which, hey, yeah, you can do it. Let's do it. Hey, can we take a step? Hey, you're by you challenging that young lady, she would have never gone up that wall. One is she has to trust you, and two, she wouldn't have done it if she didn't have somebody genuinely there with her that would give her a little bit of a nudge. What do you think is as a chief, so you see two camps in 23, right? So we get through the pandemic. You'd have been a chief a whole lot sooner, but like I didn't create Corona and I didn't create COVID or whatever we want to call it that we all experienced. You come in March and you hit up March and October. At the same time in March, life changes a little bit, right? And I'm like, I just call it out, right? Life changes a little bit. And you come to camp in March, like in that same place, like same camp, but yet it's a different Harper. You got COVID plus some changes in life. You're now older, you're in a different place in school. Like, what was it like coming back to camp? And I haven't asked anybody this. What was it like coming back to camp as somebody who went as a camper in a CIT pre-COVID to like here 2020 to 2023, 3 years difference? What was that feeling like? What were you excited for? And then what were you challenged by?
Well, I know I had applied all the cycles before that had either been canceled or just didn't work out because of COVID. So I wanted to be there. You know, I I wanted to be there. I wanted to help lead as a chief instead of being a CIT, which is great. But the thought of being able to invest in my CITs as much as I have been invested in was extremely like just pulling me there.
Yeah.
Like you said, I had a bunch of life changes, and I remember at that March meeting you asking, why are you here? And at the time, everyone wanted to invest, but for me, in that moment, RYLA, I needed it as much as every other kid. I guess people listening, if you don't know, I went through a pretty big medical diagnosis and it was completely life changing. And I really credit RYLA for helping me knowing I could be okay again. I think it was not even 2 weeks after I was in the hospital that I was there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And thinking, my mom didn't want me to go. She was like, you need to, like, you're going to be in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, no, I have to be there. Yeah. And I remember like I had like my first normal day there. And just knowing like I knew life was going to be okay after going to camp. And I feel like that's a moment that I've heard a lot of other kids say. Now, the biggest struggle was not the medical diagnosis, is that it was being a chief alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if people came in March and did or didn't know, I mean, like, so I basically, you don't have camp, and I hate to use the term minor league system, but that's the only way I can describe it is a baseball analogy. Like you lose your minor league system, you lose your developmental league where you can develop the next group. And so we don't have camp from 2020 to 2023. Well, if you were a CIT between 20 and 2023, no matter how much I tried to contact people or connect with people, people's lives had changed. People had finished school. People went to school. People got jobs. And so all of a sudden to say, hey, I need CITs and chiefs, didn't have the number of applications that I would traditionally want to have. And so, so you had somebody, and I had this same conversation with Kate a little bit. And I said, yeah, hopefully you saw this as trust because like I I absolutely trusted the group we had, but also know that hey, as a first time chief, plus the weight of the pandemic and the change we saw in kids, frankly, like the change we saw in kids was I guess unexpected. I thought it was RYLA, like we can overcome everything and anything, and then all of a sudden we get to camp and like, okay, there's a this camper is a different camper than the 17-year-old was 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And I remember coming back to the Y and talking to our team at the Y and like, he was like, how was it? And I was like, man, I just tell you, like, these 17-year-olds, it's a different breed. It's a different group than what it was 3 years ago when, 4 years ago when Harper was a chief or as a camper. So coming back and having to jump in that role by yourself, um, yeah, absolutely a challenge that everybody that you overcame. And again, you're one of my favorite people when it comes to camp, and I think the and I bring up that medical side of things not because of the
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, Matt's talking about Harper's Medical, but like you literally you made a commitment in March to come to camp when in reality everything said probably you shouldn't come to camp because it's a brand new life, and you said it, you hadn't been away from anybody, and like all of a sudden here's day one on your own and you're with you know a group of people out in the middle of the woods in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, right?
It,
um
yeah, it definitely it was a lot, and not mean to interrupt you, but
no, 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 not at all.
one of the things that you had said I want to add on to was about the trust in your side. I remember not being, we weren't aware of our chief situation before we had come that time, which was new in itself. And
Right.
I see, now I know the reason why now, we had to trust you in that situation. And I just remember being so scared of being alone.
Yeah.
But then after thinking it was, I knew camp worked, and camp ended up working that year. Somehow
Right.
we got through it, but just knowing
Yeah.
that like you would not have put me and the other chief who was alone on our own if you did not trust us to alone.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I had choices, right? So we have 8 tribes and I had choices and I was like, okay. And I just say this, like, I mean, who can stand on their own? Who do I trust? Who do I have confidence in that can communicate through their group leader? And that if it's really not right, they're going to tell me this isn't right. Like that like they're going to be transparent and clear with me and not necessarily try to like suck it up and just fight through it. But it's going to be like, hey, I need some help. Um, but all the while, the trust piece being the main factor of that. I mean, just absolutely, absolutely, it's important you bring that up because there were two groups that only had one chief, and you were one of those two people. And again, I think the world of you beyond that. That's probably a perfect reason why, um, I was willing to put you there. What when you think about camp, what's your like RYLA moment?
Hmm. Of course, there's so many. I know one now happened my CIT year,
Okay.
and my tribe was in the chairs, on the deck over by the cafeteria.
Yep.
And we had one of our campers who had been, again, kind of the quiet one. I believe he had come from one of the Tulsa boys' homes, so he had had a very, very rough life. He was one of the
Sure.
kids who was going to grow a lot from here. And I remember that the last night we were there, we were on a circle and he was in the middle of it. He willingly went there. He put himself there,
Yeah.
and he just let his emotions go. He didn't try to be this cool guy. He just kind of let us all in, and without the CITs or chiefs prompting that student, all the other kids went to him
Mm.
and put their hands on him and hugged him and supported him. And in that, I remember in that moment just thinking, wow, like this is what it is. And then I actually got a call from him probably about a year later. I'd given him my number. He never reached out to me or anything before that, but he had told me that he had gotten a place and that he was doing better. And he credited camp and the support he got to kind of getting his life back on track and knowing that he's a good person. A
Yeah.
lot of kids, they don't get told they're good anymore.
Right.
All you hear is negative things. And at camp, I mean, you get those affirmation cards, and that may be some of the first words of positivity some of these kids get.
Yeah.
And I think seeing how that kid was able to grow and also know to kind of look back and thank some people who helped him. I mean, that's a moment that like I just remember being like, who is this person calling me? And being like, oh my goodness, like I remember you and the contribution you had to me and to everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that again, it goes back to kind, like certain times, like Harper, there's other people that it's like we can't just stop being nice to somebody because they're not, maybe we don't feel like they're receptive to the kindness or whatever. We just got to continue to be filled with joy. I say that like because it eventually people get it, and with camp, some people get it at camp, some people get it after camp, some people get it so much they want to come back and serve. And so, what's the reason you choose to come back? I mean, what's the like? You get down to it. You said you continue to want, you continue to apply. It's on the front of your mind. Like when you see now that you've seen two camps as a chief, like why come back?
I love seeing how the students I love seeing they get to know each other. That's always just magical. Seeing how from day one they come in from all these different schools and you have a mix of everyone. You have the athletes, you have the choir and band kids, you have the
Yeah,
kids who don't really do much. I mean you have the
right.
kids who have to work, who took time off from work when they probably couldn't afford to come to camp.
Sure.
um, and seeing how pretty much all of these social structures and cliques just kind of disappear for 3 days. And how when you don't have those barriers and you just listen to people and actually not listening to respond, but listening to understand.
Sure.
I think that so many kids realize there's so many different walks of life out there, and maybe they
Yeah.
realize they have it better than some other kids, or and maybe that's their call to help in the future, that oh, I didn't realize so and so in these towns deal with this, and then they know, okay, well, here's how I can help maybe make a difference to this kid or in the future. Seeing the friendships, I just love seeing how the kids come together. That last day when they're all crying. I don't like
Yeah.
crying, but seeing how in how many hours is it, just how they can go from strangers not wanting to sit together to like thinking about next year, I want to come back.
Yeah. I think that's such an interesting point because like I liken it to it's the power of camp in general. If camp's done the right way, like if I go if I go to any camp that's an overnight experience, resident camp seems to do this more than anything else. If I took you and your four best friends and you went and stayed, even your four best friends, and you went and stayed for 4 nights in a common space, you would learn something about that person, even though you say, "Oh no, I know them all." But when you all of a sudden initiate conversation and you ask questions that probe relationship, belonging, that probe like mission, it changes even more because we get into the past and how we're shaped. Like I was talking to John Rains, who's chaperone now for us twice, that's in the Rotary Club at downtown Tulsa. And John and I were having lunch last week, and I just told John has become an absolute advocate for what we do. He never saw RYLA. He's always volunteered at Camp Enterprise, which is an entrepreneurial camp with Camp Enterprise with being junior achievement based at downtown Tulsa. And he said, really, Matt, he said what RYLA does, and it's not to be dumbed down, but RYLA is truly foundational.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the foundational being, which it's that thing. It's our thumbprint. It's like the core, like we build the core, right? And so Harper has to have this foundation of her life, her person. And if she has mission, vision, values, and purpose, she can determine what she wants to do at Oklahoma State. And so, how do I create Harper's values, her beliefs, everything have to keep going up almost this pyramid to the point where Harper's identity is this. But it comes from my thumbprint. It comes from the culture activity. It comes from agree, disagree. It comes from mission. It comes from my talent shield. all those things create the the base of the house, which is the strongest part of the house, is the foundation. And so the strongest part of our being is, one, being who we are, and two, understanding that we have value. And I think that when you look at RYLA, like that's really that opportunity that all of a sudden I can go from 70, I can go for over 90 hours close to. I can go from getting out of the car going, I don't like this. There's people being loud. Like I'm not an introvert, but like my cool kid card is in my hand when I get out of the car, to all of a sudden come Saturday night, after I went over the wall, after we've struggled through paracord, after we've been through all the team challenges, after we've talked about mission, vision, value, all those things, I get to the affirmation cards and I go, it's not just somebody saying it to me. I now have something tangible. That's why we write our mission statements versus just speaking. We do both. And so somebody has affirmed me by saying Matt, dot, 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 and then somebody's written it. And now all of a sudden, Sunday morning, I go, I'm probably not going to find this feeling anywhere else. And it's a hard feeling to explain. A large portion of why these videos are working for me is because these videos are giving Rotarians understanding that I think before they hear the Pied Piper, they hear the guy that's like, it's your job to talk about camp. Like, it's your job to get kids to camp. Well, it's my volunteer job. If it was my real job, I'd, be different, but it's my volunteer job. And to hear folks like you and folks like Aaron and Kyle and all the above that just continue to say, I want to come back and serve. I want to come back and help kids. I want to come back and make sure that people know their value. I think that's so, so critical, for folks to hear what you just like, how you go from here to here, and here says, I don't want to leave. I think a large part of it is just the world we live in today isn't a world of affirmations. It's not a world of kindness. It's a world of difference.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that every single day, no matter where you go in this great nation. Stillwater, Pryor, Skiatook, we can find 110 different ways to separate us within seconds. And the last thing that should separate us is just being kind to people and making sure people know that they hold value as a person. And I think that's what we do at camp. The activities and all of that are great, but I think it's we accept people as they are. And in that, we allow them to find out who they really are. And that probably isn't the cool kid.
Yeah.
It's probably the kid. It's probably the 17-year-old that goes, that's why I make the decisions I make. That's why I am who I am. And I just couldn't be any more ecstatic to hear you say that, because I think you walk that so well when it comes to being a leader with your tribe. I mean, it's everything you're saying isn't just lip service. It's absolutely what I see. So, that means a lot to me. That's the person I trusted to be the only person, one of the two people by themselves back in March. And it's a person that I want to continue to see be a part of changing people's lives, whether it be through Rotary, be through being an adult in Oklahoma State. If that's be taking your gifts, talents, and passions, and all of a sudden, your political science degree and going and, working alongside somebody that has common beliefs and values that you have, to make the world a better place, with your mission statement and with your talent shield. So I think the world of you. I think the world is better with you in it. I'm ecstatic that your parents trusted you as well and said you should go to camp. You have allowed you to go to camp. They allowed you to go to camp in March, so that you could make a difference and make the difference you've made in March and October, and you'll continue to make, in and out of RYLA, with that. As we wrap this thing up, give me some parting words. What do you want people to know? What's on your mind?
I think just kids need to come to camp. I haven't listened to all what other people have said. But it's so important to find kids who there's so many different walks of life who need to come. And I think camp is just great. I think that this whole talk is this whole video call is talk about that. and but pushing kids to take the next step, and also pushing kids on how they can take what they learned back home to them is so important. Like I know one of someone who I became close with last time. They were the kid who didn't get anything coming there, but then afterwards their life completely changed. And I saw them in their 3 days working at camp, or 4 days working at camp, continue to grow. You
Yeah.
know, when we go to camp, anyone goes to camp, it doesn't stop your camp or you're growing. You continue every year you go, you find something else out about yourself. I bet every year you find something out about yourself.
Yeah.
I know if my after my first chief year, you know, how to be alone, I learned I can I can do stuff alone. You know,
Yeah.
I can lead, but I had to be the leader. You know, I had to keep everyone on track. Had to wear so many hats at once, and it gave me such a boost of confidence that I am capable of doing things even when I'm scared. And I think everyone does something at camp challenge by choice. You
Yeah.
know that, and they learn they're capable.
Yeah.
And even if it's taking 2 steps up the ladder to go on the high ropes course, you know, every kid at camp does something they did not think they were going to do before. And
Yeah.
I think having that confidence boost that they did something that they were scared to do will just continue to grow as they do other things in life, whether it's going to college, whether that's graduating or going out for the school play. Like I think almost every life has changed one way or another going to camp. Whether they know it or not, you don't go to camp and come back the same person.
Yeah.
You change somehow.
Yeah, I completely agree, and you're right. I do, and I'll tell you, like the interesting thing is, um, I mean, you've been around camp since my kids have been around camp, right? Like my kids, I remember sitting at camp before Maddox was born, and like I just can't wait for him to see this thing, like my kids to see this, and like all of a sudden it's grown to the point where like our RYLA family is part of my kids' family. Like my kids see these young adults like yourself, and they go, "That's my favorite person," and so uh the kids have been begging me to be on the RYLA routine because like it's made an impact on who they are.
Mhm.
Like they haven't they've seen every aspect of camp, a 7, 9, and 11-year-old, with the exception of a new day and me talking about my story. There'll be a time and a place, and it's not with everybody there to have those conversations. But they're like, I want to be on, I want to be on, I want to be on. But even for that 7, 9, and 11-year-old, camp makes an impact. And you're right, everybody will take one thing away. And the thing I've taken away from you is that you're awesome. And I'm, again, super blessed to have you today as we tie this thing up. Um, we're recording this Friday, but it is Super Bowl Sunday when this thing goes live. Have an awesome Sunday. Uh, who knows? Maybe next week we will let the Hancock kids have their way and actually get to be a part of the RYLA routine. But Harper, you're awesome. I appreciate you very much for giving me your time. And you guys stay blessed. Harper, stay blessed and have an awesome, awesome day.